Our next session is to introduce the Council on Information Sharing, which will be under the management of the National Association of Credit Management. And in a few minutes, I'm going to bring up Mr. Mike Brittain to explain to you about that organization. But before I do, I'd like to give you a little background of how this group came about and why. Collecting money from the agents in our business is one of the main challenges we face. Certainly, there's always a trade-off between credit decisions that you may want to make and doing the business and getting the agent. Once you do have the agent, the banking problem that we have has not helped. It's made it more difficult to collect the money. And as time passes and you haven't collected the money, the balances go up. And if the agent stops doing business, you're reluctant to turn him off because if he stops doing business, you're not doing business. So sometimes these balances get quite high. There are two kinds of problems we face. One would be called serial defaulters, where an agent moves from one transmitter to the other, leaving a trail of debts in his wake. The other one would be simultaneous default, and that's where an agent who already represents many money transmitters declares bankruptcy or leaves town all at once, leaving many money transmitters holding the bag. Altogether, we're in a business that requires good reputation, requires good credit, and especially relies on the quality of our agents and the supervision that we give those agents. So I think it's really important that we do have such a solution. Last year, at this conference, we had a roundtable, and some companies at the roundtable brought the subject up again. And I had already been discouraged at that point because we had tried several times to start such a group, so I was kind of reluctant and pessimistic about our ability to do it. But I was encouraged by our chairman to continue, and I did, and I was glad that we did. We started calling regular Monday meetings at 3 p.m. every Monday, which we're going to start again, by the way, for other reasons. But these meetings were for the purpose of forming a group that would discuss ways that we could get together. We faced several challenges. Number one was the form of organization. Number two was what kind of software would we use. Number three was what kind of rules would we follow and what kind of behavior would we expect from the members. So these meetings were for the purpose of discussing those things. And I would say that out of 20 companies that opted in, we had 4 companies that were going to be the core membership, and in fact they did become the core membership. And really, I think these challenges would have been insurmountable if we hadn't found first a website called creditworthy.com, which had for the last 16 years been developing a software platform, an internet-based software platform for the specific purpose of companies sharing information. And through our knowledge of Creditworthy, we were lucky to be introduced to the National Association of Credit Management, which has been doing this for about 110 years, I believe. And it turns out that, surprise to me, the money transfer industry was not the only industry that had this problem. There are many industries in which a bunch of sellers sell to a common pool of commercial customers, and they compete against each other for these customers. And they have a very specific market that they want to have information on. These are companies that perhaps their full credit picture will not be available on Dun & Bradstreet or any of the large commercial credit bureaus that exist. So it's important that these companies get together and share information so that they have the most up-to-date information that they can use to protect themselves and make rational decisions. The National Association of Credit Managers has been running these industry credit groups for quite a while. The main legal obstacle to one of these groups is the concern about being accused of antitrust violations. And in fact, in the beginning, some of our members were hoping that this group would result in the expulsion of these bad agents from the industry. A little bit of reading, though, taught me that this is not the purpose of the group, and it cannot be the purpose of the group. What we're interested in is objective information and the sharing of that information among the concerned members of the group. Each member of the group will then go off and make their own decision as to whether or not they want to continue to do business with any particular agent. So with that, I think I've spoken long enough. I've given some of the background of it, but suffice it to say that I was incredibly relieved and happy, and now I am proud to announce that the NMTA has entered into a partnership alliance with the National Association of Credit Management, and we have its president, Mr. Mike Brittain, to explain to you what he does, why it's good, and why everybody in this audience should join. Mr. Brittain.
David and Hugo, thank you again very, very much. Let me paint a scenario for you. Maybe it's familiar, maybe it's not, maybe it will be sometime. This guy just burned me for $10,000. And then I find out he's over there doing business with my competitor. This is so common. We've done these groups since 1896, and yes, I probably have done them that long myself. We do about 1,500 groups. We have about 1,500 industry groups. We do several every month. There's industry credit groups going on every day. And what you've described, what David described for you, is exactly what we're talking about. Now let's face it. Whether you are moving money or selling a product based on a promise that somebody is going to pay you at some point in the future, then you are creating what's called an open account, unsecured credit, a transaction that must be managed. And the way to manage that is to help get in front of it and prevent it. And that's what the purpose of any industry group is about. It's competitors coming together to talk about a common mutual base of customers and finding out from the other one that competitor's experience, specific factual data experience with that customer. So, as I said, and David said, NACM has been doing this for 115 years now. So we are pretty experienced at it, and more importantly, we are recognized by the FTC, the people that are the enforcement agency of the antitrust division. Our folks are certified. That's something that's relatively new in this industry. We've had a few decisions come down through the FTC and the antitrust division within the past 10 years that has changed our world just a little bit, but we've stepped up to that challenge and certified our people in the performance and management of industry credit groups. All of our people are certified group administrators. So that means that you can depend on those people for handling an industry group and an exchange of information in a safe environment. But let me tell you just a little bit about antitrust. The idea of antitrust is to prevent restraint of trade, conspiracy to do business or not to do business with a customer or with a specific customer or with a customer in a certain way. There can be no pricing, and including discussion of terms, because if one company has a payment term of 30 days, then that is an element that becomes, according to antitrust, an element of price. If you have factored into your pricing the carry on 30 days terms, then somebody else might not have that. So if you share that, you're basically, according to antitrust, sharing your pricing. And antitrust allows no discussion whatsoever of any form of pricing among competitors. At the bar, at this meeting, in the parking lot, before or after, anytime, whether you're in a meeting or not in a meeting. So in a very minute way, we're covering a lot of what we do in antitrust by summing it up and saying restraint of trade, conspiracy, and pricing are the key elements that we cannot conspire to do business, not to do business, to do business under certain terms, to try to run somebody out of the business. We can't boycott or blacklist anybody, even suppliers. We just can't do that. Defamation is another element that we monitor closely. It is not an antitrust rule, but it is something that cannot be avoided. When you talk about companies in an open environment among competitors, people run companies. You cannot help but default to talk about who is the owner of that company, what is that philosophy of that owner. And oftentimes we have to look at the personal credit information on an owner of a business to see, as we say in our business, the leopard doesn't change the spots. So if they run if their personal credit is in shambles, it's very likely the company that they're running or is responsible for may also end up or be in shambles. So that's something that is important to know. So that kind of information we are able to discuss. But when people run businesses, and we have to end up talking about those people that run those businesses, we are very cautious not to libel or slander any of those individuals. So we have to be very careful about how we say, what we say, and that no derogatory comment about an individual's personal life or affairs are open for discussion. And the last thing that we talk about under the heading of antitrust is confidentiality. If we have a breach of confidentiality of the information that was shared in a group, let me suggest to you that we don't need any laws that govern that aspect of the exchange. There is no law that governs the aspect of that exchange. Because once there's a breach in a group of information being shared with some inappropriate party, including the customer, and it gets back to the group shuts down. They can't trust each other anymore, so there is no more sharing of information. It's a function of just normal operations. There's nothing that has to be said. It's really hard to get the group back on track if there is a breach. So we have some very strict policies and procedures that include expulsion from the group of a non-conforming member who would breach and assure us that that would not happen again. So how do we do all of this? We conduct meetings, personal meetings, where we get together and share information face-to-face. In the meantime, that's how we started doing it in 1896 out of Toledo, Ohio, and we've expanded to nationwide with this same concept. But about 15, 16 years ago, we discovered that we are going to have to close the gap. If meetings are held every month, some meetings are held every quarter, some meetings are held once a year. Most of the members can't afford to wait that long for information that they need to make credit decisions. So we developed, through Creditworthy and our own resources, this online exchange of information that is designed specifically to protect members from those very violations of antitrust that we discussed, that we mentioned earlier. So through a process of password-protected and website for our members to go to, for them to then make the kind of historical the historical factual data that they have, and make the type of comments that are appropriate. We have pre-populated drop-down boxes so that they can choose from an already approved antitrust-approved kind of response. So it's laid out very simple, it's very fast, so members can then be fully protected from any threat of violation. We still see industries. Some industries don't talk to each other. They're too competitive. They are afraid a competitor is going to get a piece of information that they don't want them to have through this formal exchange of information, and we can't do anything about that. If industries don't want to talk to each other about the commonality of their accounts and how their accounts are paying their bills to each other, then they're just on their own. Some companies feel like, well, we'll have those losses, we'll just outsell our losses. But as margins have dropped, if profit margins have dropped over the past decade or so, the advent of industry groups has become, again, much more prominent. Thank you again so very much.